All right, you guys, we got JJK chapter 255 here in front of us, and it is a pretty good chapter, you know? Last chapter, I was like, okay, I'm getting tired of the 1v1s. Where is Jump Kaisen? And Jump Kaisen was just delivered today. So, we start off the chapter with Miguel and Laru. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And not only did they save Wee from last chapter, but they also saved Kusakabe, which is really good because I do not want Kusakabe to die. Like, if everybody who fought Sukuna actually kicked the bucket, dude, that final chapter would be really sad. Imagine celebrating, hey guys, we won the war, we beat the King of Curses, and then only like 3 people show up at the party, right? We need these guys to come back. So Miguel saving Wee is pretty huge since he is a key part to their survival. I feel like Shoko gets 90% of the reward, but Wee is on the front lines bringing them to her. So we actually don't see Wee taking Kusakabe to Shoko here. We kind of just see them in one page, and then when we skip over, they're kind of gone. So I like to imagine, you know, a lot of things are being off-screen here, and honestly throughout this chapter and the fight, it does look like Gege is jumping around a lot. Like, for example, 1 second Sukuna is being pushed back by Laru, and then next second he's fighting Miguel, and then the next second Choso shows up, and then Yuji shows up. Like, there's a lot of mini jumps throughout this chapter, so you can kind of tell that Gege is trying to pick up the pace a little bit, which, you know, I don't mind too much. But I will admit, sometimes it is a little bit jarring because I'll be reading this chapter and I'm like, oh snap, you know, Yuji has him on lock. And then next time we look at Sukuna, it's like, oh no, he just used Black Flash, you know? It's one of those things. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm illiterate when it comes to Battle Shonen. But then again, I guess we could just chalk it up to Sukuna being super fast, right? You could say that he's so fast, it's essentially just instant transmission. And I would kind of agree with you. So after we see Miguel and Laru in the beginning of the chapter, we go on and we get a little flashback. Gege loves this flashback. Not a chapter goes by where we don't get some sort of flashback here. And this time around, we actually get 2 of them. Starting off, we have Miguel, Laru, and Yuta. And Yuta's trying to convince them to fight Sukuna. I'm assuming that this is taking place during the 1-month hiatus, which is kind of crazy still. Like, we don't exactly know what they did during that 1-month period. Like, we saw a lot of people training, we saw a lot of people talking, and since it's such a big time period, we could even get moments like this where we straight up travel to see Miguel and ask him to come to our side, which is kind of funny. So yeah, Yuta's like, hey, you need to come help us fight Sukuna, because if he wins, a Godzilla-like entity is going to spawn from the merger, and you're going to have to fight that eventually. Miguel counters that, and he says, hey, maybe fighting that Godzilla monster is better than fighting Sukuna. And I kind of want to agree with him. Like, you know, every time they talk about the merger, I'm just like, well, can't be that bad, right? Like, I really want to see it to believe it. Like, whenever I think of the merger with Tengen, I kind of just imagine the rumbling from Attack on Titan. Granted, I haven't watched Attack on Titan, so I'm not too sure how it works, but all I'm imagining is a giant, weird-looking creature in the sky who's just really big. But yeah, like, I'm not too sure how the merger is going to go. I still think that one way or another, Sukuna is going to accomplish the merger. It's just one of those boogeymen in series that I just feel like we have to meet by the end of story. Right? Like, I can't imagine JJK ending, we don't get to see it at least for a second. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. Miguel just kind of uses that to combat Yuta. Laru kind of pulls him to the side and he says, hey, Miguel, we got to really talk about this. Like, what do we want to do? They end up having a quick chat about Geto, and they're like, hey, you know, like, it sucks that he's dead, but I guess we just have to press forward. We got to show him that everything's good over here so that when we see him in heaven, we can say, hey, take care, buddy. And then Miguel literally says, hey, I don't think he's in heaven, man. I gotta be honest, I think Geto's in hell, which honestly got a little chuckle out of me, because as far as all of Geto's subordinates throughout the series, they all believe that Geto is doing the right thing. You know, he's slightly evil, but, you know, they just want to help him become king. I feel like Miguel is one of those few characters who have actually seen his actions for what they are, evil. He's kind of like, hey, I know Geto's bad, but, you know, of course, we helped him anyways, right? You can't skirt by the fact that he is kind of a serial killer, you know, a mass murderer, mind you. But yeah, so after cooling down a little bit and reminiscing about Geto, they come back to Yuta, and they're like, hey, we will fight Sukuna, but with a couple of conditions, right? First up, he ropes in Laru as well. Laru had no idea this was going to happen, so he's like, wait, I'm going to fight Sukuna too? What are you talking about? But as far as his conditions go, he won't step into the battlefield until Gojo's defeated, until Yuta's defeated, and until Sukuna can no longer use his domain. He does not want to fight this guy at full capacity. And I don't really blame him, right? Like, yes, the merger is scary. Yes, that's going to eventually take over the world if you let it run rampant. But hey, Sukuna is kind of Japan's problem, right? Like, I don't live here, man. So yeah, Miguel wanting to go in with all of these stipulations just makes a lot of sense. And I would argue that Miguel got a better deal than he even bargained for. And he kind of says it in this chapter, but hey, Sukuna's heart is damaged. He can't use RCT. He's missing a hand. Like, if there was a time to fight Sukuna, it would be right now. And Miguel is really cocky about this as well, because when he walks in, he says, yo, it's like we're gonna get all the glory here, right? Like, we're gonna take all the W's. And bro, I just love how Gege is portraying Miguel here, because he's a character in JJK Zero that, in my opinion, was pretty awesome. You know, he didn't really look too great against Gojo, but he still put up a decent fight, right? He was over here tanking blows, he had the black rope, and I was like, yo, he's pretty damn nice, but we didn't really get to see any personality coming from him from JJK Zero because it was so short and because it was a movie and a one-shot manga. So the fact that we're getting more of his character here and that he is the character we expected him to be is very much well welcomed. So yeah, we get one more flashback with Miguel where he's talking to Gojo, and Gojo is just hyping this guy up. He's like, hey, Miguel, I don't know what it is, but his body, it's a little bit abnormal, you know, like that bone structure, those muscles, you don't see that in Japan. And then Miguel quickly responds, he's like, hey, that's a little bit racist, man. You know, you're putting labels on me. Not every black guy's athletic, you know, not everybody's built like me. And I understand why Miguel would want to point this out too, right? Because it kind of demeans everything that Miguel is. It's like, hey, I'm not special because I'm black. It's because I'm me. It's because I trained. It's because of my curse technique. It's because of everything about me. Like, it makes sense, and I love that this is a nice little banter we have in the manga. I saw some people getting upset. They're like, oh, Gojo's racist. But it's like, nah, dude, this is like pretty good development, right? It shows character. We see that Miguel has a lot of self-respect for who he is, and then we see Gojo even apologize. He's like, hey, my bad, dude. Like, I didn't mean it like that, right? Like, we also have to imagine that Gojo probably spends a majority of his time in Japan, so you know, he's not exactly well-versed. So I like that we actually have that little side story with Miguel and Gojo. All right, so now on to the battle. We start off with LaRue hitting Sukuna with his hand attack. It sends him flying to a wall. Sukuna eventually slashes his way out of it. He sends slashes towards LaRue and Miguel. They both end up dodging, but Miguel, his dodges are a little bit different. And that is because this man has a rhythm. So his curse technique, according to this translation I'm reading, is called Hakuna Rana, the Song of Exorcism, or the Song of Prayer, depending on how the translation is being read. And yes, apparently Miguel, once he gets into beat, he actually can start dodging attack and weaving incoming curse techniques around him, and it's pretty sick. It's not like the most amazing curse technique, as Gojo says in this chapter, but it's still a really nice tech ability to have. It's kind of like Todo, where Todo's ability didn't seem that crazy in the beginning because he just claps and changes places with people, but the way he utilizes it and the way it fits his fighting style makes it that much better. And I would argue the same for Miguel here, right? He's over here dodging all your attacks until it can get up close and personal, and then he lands some serious blows your way, which they are serious blows, right? Gojo's like, hey, you know, in a 1v1 battle, if I had no curse techniques, you know, if I didn't have infinity, this guy would beat me in terms of offensive capabilities. It kind of came off as a big brother hyping up his little brother, right? You want to give him hype, but not too much hype. And that's what Gojo did for Miguel. So yeah, we go back to the fight, and Miguel is just landing blow after blow on Sukuna. Sukuna can't really do anything about it, right? Miguel is like holding his hand while hitting him at the same time. And Miguel is even adding in some little martial arts moves here and there while he's beating down Sukuna, which is pretty cool to see. And then that is when we get the first jarring cut, in my opinion, where, you know, I was like, hey, how do we go from point A to point B? But after Miguel lands a blow, we look behind Sukuna and we see that Choso is readied up. He tries to shoot a blood beam his way. It misses. And then we see Sukuna throw slashes his way, but it is not over because Choso was just the distraction for Yuji, who comes in from above, which at this point I'm kind of like, wait, where's Miguel still, right? Wasn't Miguel right in front of him? But yeah, Yuji comes out from above. He slams down. And this is when we get some huge information as far as Sukuna's capabilities right now. So we learn, and I feel like we learn something new about Gojo versus Sukuna every chapter, but in this chapter, it is confirmed that Sukuna indeed used a binding vow to send out the world dismantler that killed Gojo, which a lot of people speculated this back when the chapter first came out, but they're like, hey, how did Sukuna do this with just one arm? That shouldn't be possible. Turns out he used a binding vow. So now whenever he wants to use a world dismantle, he has to put two hands together, form the hand sign, and do an incantation, and then send the slash out manually. His ultimate attack got heavily nerfed after his fight with Gojo. So the reason why the narrator gives us this explanation is because he's about to use the world slash on Yuji, but Maki shows back up after taking quite a beating and being hit with the Black Flash finisher. Maki shows up and cuts his other left hand off. Maki is looking like she's having the time of her life, and that is when we cut back over to Yuji, and he's like, yo, this is our best chance yet. The guy can't use World Dismantle, he can't use RCT, he can't use his domain expansion, his heart is in shambles. We got this in the bag! But somehow, one way or another, Sukuna disappeared from in front of Yuji, and he pretty much teleports to LaRue. And that is when he lays the smackdown. He gets a critical hit with Black Flash. And then the narrator box says, yo, Gojo, after 2 Black Flashes, was able to get some energy back and his RCT back. Sukuna just landed his second one. You know, Sukuna just landed a second Black Flash. And here's the thing. I know people are saying it's not confirmed, right? You know, Sukuna having RCT again, Sukuna getting powered up from this. Not said explicitly, but it's being implied, right? The narrator box knows what it's doing. Gege knows what he's doing. He wants us to think that Sukuna's RCT is now back, and personally, I think it is. If you look at the smile that Sukuna has at the end of this chapter, that is the smile of somebody who just got a big advantage. So yeah, I think come next chapter, Sukuna is going to be putting up more of a fight, which sounds about right, because in this chapter, he's kind of just getting beaten to a pulp left and right. You know, Sukuna is just reacting to everything rather than leading the fight. So I think next chapter will definitely switch that up a little bit. But yeah, all in all, man, I really love this chapter. I loved the reintroduction of Miguel and LaRue. LaRue is a character I completely forgot about, so seeing him here was pretty cool, I guess. And then another aspect I really liked was the fact that Jump Kaisen was in full effect. You know, I love seeing these characters jump in one after another fighting Sukuna. You know, while they're fighting them, other people are resting up and vice versa. You know, we can just tag in and out of this battle, and I like that we're doing that. It kind of feels like we're fighting a boss in Final Fantasy, and every character has their specific turn to land an attack, and that's pretty much what's happening here. But yeah, with that being said, guys, that is my quick thoughts on this chapter, my quick little overview. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next chapter, JJK. My name is Sai, signing out.